deep in the Amazon. The laboratory was buried deep within the Amazon, hidden, secret. Scientists worked feverishly, their faces illuminated by the glow of monitors. They were on the brink of a breakthrough, or perhaps a catastrophe. The air crackled with tension. They were playing God. Professor Caldwell, the project lead, adjusted his glasses. His eyes, magnified behind the thick lenses, reflected both excitement and fear. In a containment unit, a creature shifted. It was unlike anything the world had ever seen. A creature born of hubris and scientific daring. A Tweakasaur. The goal had been simple. Recreate a dinosaur. But not just any dinosaur. They wanted something bigger, stronger, faster. They tampered with its DNA, splicing in genes from various creatures. The result was a behemoth. Scales the color of emeralds shimmered under the artificial lights. But there was a problem. The Tweakasaur was lethargic. Professor Caldwell proposed a radical solution, a low dose of crystal meth. It was a gamble, a dangerous one. But the results were immediate. The creature roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of the lab. Project Tweakasaur was alive. The Tweakasaur paced in its enclosure, its massive form moving back and forth with a restless energy that seemed to electrify the air around it. The creature's agitation was palpable, a living, breathing testament to its raw, untamed power. Each step it took reverberated through the ground, a reminder of the sheer force contained within its muscular frame. Restless, its eyes, usually cold and reptilian, were now wide and bloodshot, filled with a wild, almost frantic energy. The once calm and calculating gaze had transformed into something far more menacing, a window into the beast's growing fury. It was as if the Tweakasaur could sense something was amiss, something that threatened its very existence. It clawed at the reinforced glass, its powerful talons leaving deep gouges in the seemingly impenetrable barrier. The sound of its claws scraping against the glass was a harsh, grating noise that echoed through the enclosure, a stark contrast to the usual silence of the lab. Each strike was a testament to the creature's desperation, a primal urge to break free from its confines. The scientists watched, a mixture of awe and terror on their faces. They had spent years studying the Tweakasaur, but nothing had prepared them for this. The creature's sudden change in behavior was both fascinating and terrifying, a reminder of the unpredictable nature of their work. They knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, but the fear of what might happen next was ever present. Outside, the jungle was alive with the sounds of the night. Insects chirped, monkeys howled. The symphony of the jungle was a constant backdrop to the events unfolding within the lab, a reminder of the wild, untamed world that lay just beyond the walls. The night was thick with the scent of damp earth and vegetation, a sensory overload that heightened the tension in the air. And then, a new sound, a low hiss that seemed to slither through the air, cutting through the cacophony of the jungle like a knife. It was a sound that was both foreign and familiar, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. The hiss was almost serpentine, a sinister whisper that sent a shiver down the spine of anyone who heard it. It was a sound that sent shivers down their spines. The scientists and staff in the lab froze, their eyes widening in fear as the hiss grew louder, more insistent. It was as if the very air around them had turned to ice, the temperature dropping as the sound reverberated through the jungle. The sense of impending doom was palpable, a heavy weight that pressed down on their chests, a sound that spoke of ancient power and primal hunger. It was a reminder of the ancient creatures that had once roamed the earth, predators that had ruled the jungle with an iron fist. The hiss was a call to the wild, a signal that something ancient and powerful was on the move. It was a sound that awakened a primal fear in the hearts of those who heard it, a fear that was as old as time itself. The Shartaconda, the stuff of local legends, a creature that had been whispered about in hushed tones for generations, a myth that had taken on a life of its own. The Shartaconda was said to be a serpent of unimaginable size and strength, a predator that could crush its prey with a single coil of its massive body. It was a creature that had inspired fear and awe in equal measure, a legend that had stood the test of time, a snake of unimaginable size. The Shartaconda was said to be as long as a river and as thick as a tree trunk, a creature that defied the laws of nature. Its scales were said to be as hard as steel, its eyes as cold and calculating as the Tweakasaur's. It was a predator that had no equal, a creature that had ruled the jungle for centuries. And it was drawn to the lab, drawn to the Tweakasaur. The two ancient creatures were on a collision course, their fates intertwined in a dance of death and survival. The Shartaconda moved with a purpose, its massive body slithering through the jungle with a grace that belied its size. It was a predator on the hunt, and its prey was the Tweakasaur. The stage was set for an epic showdown, a battle that would determine the fate of the jungle. The lab shook with a force that sent tremors through the jungle floor. The containment unit shattered. Shards of reinforced glass flew like deadly confetti. The Tweakasaur was free. It roared again, a sound of both fury and triumph. And then it saw the Shartaconda. Coiled around the lab entrance, its eyes like molten gold. The two titans clashed, a whirlwind of scales, claws, and teeth. The earth trembled. Trees were uprooted. The scientists scrambled for cover as their experiment spiraled into chaos. The jungle became a battleground for an epic showdown. Section 5. Nature calls unexpectedly. The Tweakasaur, fueled by adrenaline and crystal meth, fought with primal fury. But something was wrong. The meth, it seemed, had an unexpected side effect. Constipation. The Tweakasaur paused, its reptilian face contorted in discomfort. The Shartaconda, sensing weakness, seized the opportunity. It lunged, its jaws wide open, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. The scientists watched in horror. This was it. Their creation, their experiment, was about to meet a gruesome end. But then, something unexpected happened. Section 6. Trapped in Paradise. The Tweakasaur let out a roar not of fury but of relief. It had been days since the creature had felt such a sense of ease. The dense jungle had been both a sanctuary and a prison, its thick foliage hiding dangers and treasures alike. The constipation had passed. The Shartaconda, caught off guard by the sudden shift in momentum, recoiled. It had been stalking the Tweakasaur for hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But now the tables had turned. It was too late. The Tweakasaur, energized and relieved, slammed into the giant snake with the force of a runaway train. The impact was so powerful that it sent shockwaves through the ground, causing smaller creatures to scatter in fear. The jungle, usually a cacophony of sounds, fell silent for a brief moment. The scientists used the distraction to escape. They fled into the jungle, the sounds of the battle echoing behind them. Their mission had been to study the unique ecosystem, but now survival was their only goal. Each step they took was filled with urgency, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. But the jungle held its own dangers, vines that snapped like barbed wire. These vines seemed almost sentient, wrapping around ankles and wrists, making every movement a struggle. The scientists had to use their machetes to cut through the thick vegetation, their progress slow and arduous. Insects with bites that burned like fire. These tiny tormentors were relentless, swarming around the scientists, leaving welts and itching bites in their wake. The jungle air was thick with humidity, making the bites even more unbearable. And all around them, the sounds of the jungle amplified in the darkness. The chirping of crickets, the distant calls of nocturnal animals, and the rustling of leaves created an eerie symphony. The scientists knew they had to keep moving, but the darkness made every step treacherous. They could only hope that the Tweakasaur's battle with the Shartaconda would buy them enough time to find safety. As night fell, the scientists decided to set up a makeshift camp. They gathered whatever materials they could find to create a shelter, hoping it would provide some protection from the jungle's many threats. Exhausted and weary, they took turns keeping watch, their eyes scanning the darkness for any signs of danger. Each scientist was filled with a mix of determination and fear. They had come to this jungle seeking knowledge, but now they were fighting for their lives. The events of the day had shown them just how unpredictable and perilous this paradise could be. As dawn broke, the first light of day illuminated the forest, bringing a sense of hope. The scientists knew they had to keep moving, but the brief respite had given them a chance to regroup and plan their next steps. The jungle was still filled with dangers, but they were determined to find a way out. With renewed determination, the scientists moved through the jungle, cautiously navigating the terrain. Every sound, every movement was scrutinized, their senses heightened by the constant threat of danger. They knew that the Tweakasaur and the Shartaconda were not the only threats they faced, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They consulted their map, plotting a route that would take them to the edge of the jungle. It was a long and arduous journey, but they were determined to make it. The jungle had tested their limits, but it had also shown them the strength of their resolve. Through teamwork and camaraderie, the scientists supported each other, sharing resources and offering encouragement. They knew that their survival depended on their ability to work together and stay focused on their goal. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the jungle began to open up to a clearing. The sight of open space brought a surge of relief and hope. They were close to freedom, but they knew they couldn't let their guard down just yet. As they emerged from the jungle, stepping into the clearing, the scientists felt a wave of triumph. They had faced the dangers of the jungle and survived. Now they could finally breathe a sigh of relief and look forward to the journey ahead. The scientists' faces showed a mix of exhaustion and relief. They had been trapped in paradise, but they had found a way out. The experience had changed them, but it had also made them stronger. They knew that they would never forget the lessons they had learned in the heart of the jungle. As they looked back at the jungle in the distance, It served as a reminder of the challenges they had overcome. They had been trapped in paradise, but they had emerged victorious. The jungle had tested their limits, but it had also revealed their true strength. Section 7. A desperate gamble. They were lost, hopelessly lost. Professor Caldwell, his lab coat torn and sweat-soaked, consulted his compass. It spun uselessly. "We need to get to higher ground," he said, his voice raspy with fear and exhaustion. "There's an old watchtower a few miles east. We might be safe there." But the jungle was relentless. Thorns tore at their skin. Mosquitoes swarmed, their bites raising angry welts. And still, the sounds of the battle raged in the distance. Section 8. Freedom's Price. They reached the watchtower just as dawn broke. The first light of the day cast long shadows over the dense jungle, painting the scene in hues of gold and green. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant calls of awakening wildlife. A rickety structure of wood and rusting metal, but it offered a view. The watchtower, though old and seemingly fragile, stood as a silent sentinel over the vast expanse of the forest. Its creaking timbers and rusted bolts told tales of many seasons weathered, yet it remained steadfast, providing a vantage point that was both a blessing and a curse. And what they saw chilled them to the bone. Faces turned pale, eyes widened in horror, and breaths caught in throats. The scene before them was beyond their worst nightmares, a tableau of destruction and death that seemed almost surreal in the soft morning light. The jungle floor was a scene of devastation. Trees were uprooted. The once vibrant and lush forest now lay in ruins, a testament to the ferocity of the battle that had taken place. Massive trees, which had stood for centuries, were now nothing more than splintered wood and shattered trunks. The ground was littered with scales and blood. The forest floor, usually teeming with life, was now a grim mosaic of scales, blood, and debris. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, mingling with the earthy aroma of the jungle, creating a nauseating blend that turned stomachs. And in the middle of it all, the Tweakasaur stood victorious. Its massive form cast a long shadow over the devastation, its scales glistening with a mixture of blood and sweat. The creature's eyes, filled with a primal intelligence, surveyed the scene with a sense of triumph. The Shartaconda lay dead, its body twisted at an unnatural angle. The once fearsome serpent, now a lifeless husk, lay contorted in a grotesque position, its scales dull and lifeless. The battle had been fierce, but the Tweakasaur had emerged as the undisputed victor. A distant whirring sound broke the silence. The soft, rhythmic thumping of rotor blades grew louder, cutting through the oppressive stillness that had settled over the jungle. It was a sound that brought with it a glimmer of hope, a helicopter, salvation. The sight of the helicopter, a sleek machine slicing through the air, brought a surge of relief. It represented a chance to escape, to leave behind the horrors of the jungle and the monstrous creatures that inhabited it. But as they watched, the Tweakasaur turned, its bloodshot eyes fixing on the helicopter. The creature's gaze, intense and unyielding, locked onto the approaching aircraft. There was a moment of stillness, a tense pause as predator and prey assessed each other. It let out a roar, a sound filled with rage and a strange, unsettling amusement. The roar echoed through the jungle, a chilling reminder of the creature's power and dominance. It was a sound that spoke of anger, but also of a twisted sense of enjoyment, as if the Tweakasaur relished the fear it instilled in those who dared to challenge it. Section 9. Epilogue. The helicopter never arrived. The last image the scientists saw before they fled, deeper into the heart of the jungle, was of the Tweakasaur, silhouetted against the rising sun. A creature born of their hubris, a monster they had unleashed upon the world. They had gone into the jungle seeking to rewrite history. They had left it running for their lives. The Tweakasaur was out there, and the jungle would never be the same.